Let's jump into our lead story of the day with the great man, Ron DeSantis, one of the few governors in this country that actually knows how to govern. He, in the big news yesterday, was sending busloads of illegal immigrants to Martha's Vineyard, like right in front of Kamala Harris' house. I freaking love it. And he did a presser about it, was getting asked a bunch of questions. And I would like to go through how he answers these questions because it's amazing the contrast between Governor Ron DeSantis on how he answers questions very clearly compared to Karine Jean-Pierre, which we have multiple segments to show on how she answers her questions, most recently from yesterday's press briefing. So without further ado, let's go ahead and listen to Ron DeSantis. The mic is a little bit weird for the interview here, so just a heads up, it has like a buzzing noise. That's not me. That's to capture the audio from their end. And it's really hard to hear the reporters asking their questions, but the main point, again, is to catch Ron DeSantis on what he says. Let's go ahead and roll it.
Okay, any questions back there? Yes, sir. We take what's happening at the southern border very seriously, unlike some, and unlike the President of the United States, who has refused to lift a finger to secure that border. And you've had millions and millions of people pouring across illegally, record amount of fentanyl coming into our country. It is absolutely killing Americans in record numbers. Of course, you have criminal aliens, but just the sheer number of people, it's not the way you run a country. Unfortunately, there's a lot of folks that come across. Where do they want to end up? A lot want to come to, because everyone wants to come to Florida. And so we've worked on innovative ways to be able to protect the state of Florida from the impact of Biden's border policies. And so that's involved a number of things. We've had different operations in the Panhandle where we've stopped human smugglers. There have been criminal charges brought. There have been drugs seized. There have been a whole bunch of things. But yes, if you have folks that are inclined to think Florida is a good place, our message to them is we are not a sanctuary state, and it's better to be able to go to a sanctuary jurisdiction. And yes, we will help facilitate that transport for you to be able to go to greener pastures.
How clear is that messaging? You understood the guy's purpose. You understood what he's doing, his plan, what he did in the past, what he's going to continue to do in the future. You don't get these types of answers from Karine Jean-Pierre. Lord knows you ain't getting it from Joe Biden, right? That guy, for the love of God, doesn't even know his own name. He doesn't even know where to start a sentence. Pressure. Like, that guy is just, we're not even going to begin with that. Amazing answers here coming from Ron DeSantis. And what's astonishing, and you will see it in the next segment, and they've been doing it in the past as well, and we've covered it here, with Karine Jean-Pierre blaming the Trump administration for a broken immigration system. And I put that in air quotes for those that are listening. A broken immigration system and a disaster from the Trump administration. Really? I mean, if the Trump administration's immigration of what they handled and did was a disaster, what do you call this current administration? What's worse than a disaster? A debacle? I don't know. But if that was a disaster, I'm just curious as what the Biden administration calls their whole shenanigans. Because hell, if you're going to blame it on Trump, which you shouldn't do, he didn't have these kind of numbers. No American president in the history of this country has had these numbers. And that's not me exaggerating. That's an actual statistic. I'm curious, what do they call their debacle that's taking place now? Let's continue.
Well, I would just note, Biden would fly people in the middle of the night, dump them all across this country. There was no warning on any of this. They're doing it and they're farming people out all around. They're also doing things like, so, we've had people right on the border helping, working ways. They will dump in San Antonio, and these people have, they're basically just there. And a lot of them end up migrating to different parts, but it's harder for us to stop a onesie-twosie coming into Florida, because I don't know, if you're just driving a normal car and you have one or two people in it who are illegal, you can't determine that on the front end. You can do if there's large movement or caravans or buses, but we haven't had that, partially because Governor Abbott is busing to New York City and D.C. And all those people in D.C. and New York were beating their chests when Trump was president, saying they were so proud to be sanctuary jurisdictions, saying how bad it was to have a secure border. The minute even a small fraction of what those border towns deal with every day is brought to their front door, they all of a sudden go berserk. And they're so upset that this is happening. And it just shows you, their virtue signaling is a fraud. Okay? They are supporting policies that are just frankly indefensible. It is not defensible for a superpower to not have any control over the territory of its country, over the borders of its country. And he inherited a situation where you didn't have this happening. And yes, we needed to build the wall. There was more that we needed to do. He reversed the Trump policies, knowing what would end up happening. And one of the reasons why we want to transport, because obviously it's expensive if people are coming here. It taxes social services and all these other things. And so if we can do in a sanctuary, well, then the chance that they come to Florida goes down dramatically. But it is also the case that, every community in America should be sharing in the burdens. It shouldn't all fall on a handful of red states. And so they're now doing it. Now they have to decide, okay, this is a policy you've supported to have an open border. You don't like it as much. When you get just a small amount compared to what these folks have dealt with in Texas and in other states. And of course, we are just at one state that everybody wants to come to. Yes, we see Americans moving here in record numbers, people visiting here. We're the number one state for foreign tourism by far in 2021 for all U.S. tourism. But even people across the border, there's a lot that say they want to come to Florida. So our message is, we're not a sanctuary state. We don't have benefits or any of that. There are some sanctuary jurisdictions, and that would be better. Now, what would be the best is for Biden to do his damn job and secure the border.
Clear answers coming from Ron DeSantis, which you're not going to get from the Biden administration. And just to kind of piggyback on what he said there, early on with COVID-19, Joe Biden was still allowing illegal immigrants across the border. And if you recall, for those that are old viewers of the Bald Brad Show, I talked a lot about this COVID-19, the illegal immigration. We've been covering it since day one here on the fact that the pause that they had where they were containing these illegal immigrants, they were putting upwards like 400, 500 people in these pods. It was only supposed to hold like 150 to 250 max. So they were doubling the size, even going against CDC guidelines of CDC said, well, these pods should only be 50% contained. And so they had to sit there and call up the CDC to get it to be 100% contained. Furthermore, they were busing, because they didn't have space, they were busing these illegal immigrants into the localities. And then the localities would have to make sure that everybody on that bus would have a COVID-19 test. And you would think, oh, well, the people that came here would have to pay for their own COVID-19 test. The localities had to pay for it. So they had to require, I guess, a local state of emergency for the locality. It's not a state of emergency, but the locality itself didn't have the funds for it. And they were driving them down because the locality, this taxpayers in that sector would have to pay for the COVID-19 tests of these busloads of immigrants coming into their area. So this has been going on for a very long time. Yesterday's episode, if you haven't seen it, the segment, we talked about how much it's costing us, $160 billion plus a year for all the illegal immigrants that are here now, currently that just came under the Biden administration. So have fun paying with that because it ain't letting up anytime soon. And I love how clear Ron DeSantis is saying, we're not a sanctuary city. And you got to love it how all these liberals and these progressive leftists were touting, oh, look at us, Los Angeles, look at us, New York, look at us, Washington, D.C. Oh, look at, we're sanctuary city, we're better than you, blah, blah. We send them like a few thousand and they can't actually take care of them. It's gridlocking their whole system, their infrastructure. You hear that from Eric Adams, the mayor of New York. He's like, what do? We can't house these people. You're talking 5,100 people when you have anywhere from 6,000 to 15,000 coming across the border every day. And they're just expecting the red states to figure it out. So I love the fact that we're busing them all over the place. Now, in a big picture, am I for illegal immigrants being bused? No. But something needs to be done here because the Biden administration is not doing anything, folks. And Ron DeSantis is right. I hope you enjoyed that clip from the Bald Brad Show. If you did, make sure to hit that subscribe button so you can stay up to date on all our future content.